I know. Hello, hello everyone. For anyone tuning in right now or later, it is week 4 of our composer series, and we're here with Ellen Mandel. She's incredible. She's going to tell us a little bit about her process and her body of work, and it is extensive. I have to say, like, reading your bio, I was like, oh my gosh.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's nice to, I think about Schubert and Mozart and these guys who wrote, 50 symphonies and 25 concerti and all this, 400 art songs. And so I want to do whatever I can do. So I'm glad you think it's extensive. I have done a lot of work in theater, and that starts to add up, when you do a lot of plays, doing music for a lot of plays. And the great thing about that for me has been, it's also working with language and literature and emotion. It's all basically that kind of work is just all emotion and setting. And that's so interesting in music. The music gives you so much of that. So it's been a lot of fun to do a lot of that.
Yeah. You've done over 90 music for over 90 plays, right?
I just try to mentally think, what I've done, and it came to 60, and then, it's not an exact count because I forget some. I just do it in my head. I don't write it all down. I sort of go like, oh yeah, which Shakespeare's have I done, and what companies have I worked with, and but yeah, it adds up after 20 plus years. I was the resident composer at a really wonderful theater in New York, the Jean Cocteau Repertory. They did classic plays, Shakespeare, Shaw, Stoppard, all that kind of stuff, as we say. And so I might do five different shows in a season. So, and then working for other companies too, then it does start to pile up. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
You seem so tied to the language. Like even the art songs you set, it's these, classic poets that we read, E. Cummings and Yeats, and are you involved in that world separate from music, or is music what brought you into that realm?
I have always loved reading and literature, and when I was working in theater, when I first started in theater in improv comedy, and I would just make stuff up. And then I said to myself, gee, if I can make this up on the spur of the moment, maybe I could, compose for plays that, have been written already. And so I got in that way. And, but I always loved reading, and there's something wonderful about expressing something about what you're reading and what you're seeing. In theater, I tend to go to a lot of rehearsals when I'm doing music for a play. Now it's composer and sound designer. So there are a lot of sound designers. Some of them, the person I'm working with on that upcoming project in Antaeus, he's a sound designer, but he's not a composer. So many times he might find music that will, in 1953, he'll take a 1953 rock and roll song or something like that, and that will be very appropriate. But sometimes you need original music. There just isn't anything, or there are lyrics in Shakespeare, often lyrics to a song, and we don't have the original music. And maybe the director is setting it in 1920s Italy or something. So you want to make a song that will feel like that time, so that's super, super fun. But I had been doing music in theater for several years, about 5 years, and a dear friend of mine who's a tenor, I just was at the point of wanting to write some art songs, because I've loved art songs since I heard Lieder. When I was in college, I actually studied a little bit of German just so I could translate the lyrics. I mean, I don't really know German, but I can tell what's a noun and a verb, and I can look it up, so that I know what the lyrics are saying. And just when I had some time, my friend sent me 3 E. Cummings poems that he wanted to have set to music for a recital that he wanted to do. And I was sitting with a little index card that I had written poets that I would like to set to music. and right at the top was E. Cummings. So, you know, it just fell in so beautifully, and it's so much fun. It's challenging, and I always feel I want to live up to the wonderfulness of the poetry. I mean, the poetry, I feel the poetry is there. You know, they don't really need me to add music because we all know the poems are great, you know. But then I say to myself, well, and this has happened, which is very moving to me. Sometimes doing a performance, people will come up to me afterwards and say, you know, I always thought E. Cummings was really difficult and I didn't get it. But now I want to go back and read them because now I see that they're, you know, that I can understand it. And that makes me feel wonderful, you know, that I'm bringing it out to people, you know. And these poets, I mean, Cummings, Yeats is unbelievable, Seamus Heaney, they're so good, you know, so.
Yeah, I love that. I think especially in art song, a lot of times the music in both the piano and the melody, it offers that subtext that sometimes you're missing when it's just the words, especially if you're an auditory person and instead of a visual person when you're reading poetry, that subtext really comes to life when
Yes.
it's music. And I love that. I love art songs. So if you bring up Leader, like I will be
You and me, let's do it all. Let's absolutely do. And that's what I feel so much when I'm writing. That's what I try to bring, is that whatever is that feeling, that mushy feeling that's kind of not expressible in words. I did music. I've done a few film scores, a few independent film scores, and one of them was a documentary. And the director said, this is a documentary, so I need music, but there can't be any emotion in the music because it has to be objective. And thank you. That's what I said. I just was like, one note of music has emotion. That's it. You know, you have music, it is emotion. And he did use my music, and I guess I fooled him that there wasn't any emotion in it. But I didn't know how to react to say, you know, duh.
There's something, yeah, there's something visceral about music that it's hard to avoid, you know, but I do think great music too often has an ambiguous quality. It can be interpreted in a lot of ways. So
Yes.
maybe he meant that. I don't know. I would hope he meant that.
Let's give him that leeway. Yeah. Well, and you can't say exactly, just like you can't say exactly what's in a poem. I don't know if you remember, I remember in high school, we had to analyze poetry. You know, what's the symbol? What does this symbolize? And this kind of mathematical analysis. And, you know, I could do it and I could make it up and I could get good grades at it. But it's so artificial compared to what's really happening, and how with a piece of music or a piece of literature or a movie or any work of art, you see it one time and you feel X, and you see it another time and you feel ABC. You know, you get so, what do you get from a human? You know, lots of different stuff. So yeah, you can't define it. It can't be defined.
No, that's in the arts. There's a lot of intangibles. I find that when I'm like looking into, you know, writing for grants and things, they want all this measurable statistics, and often it's hard to find that within the arts.
Oh, yeah.
In particular, there's so much good that comes from it that's difficult to measure, for sure. So this particular piece, it mixes Glenn Maxwell wrote the text for "Come My Way, Go Yours," which is the piece that Wendy Prober and I put together. And you had worked with Glenn before, correct? You guys had collaborated.
Yes. He's a fantastic contemporary British poet. And a theater company that I work with has produced here in New York, the Phoenix Theater Ensemble, has produced a number of his plays. The plays are in verse, but you really wouldn't notice that when you're hearing the lines. It just comes right out, you know, very easily. So I had done music for a number of those shows, and he comes into New York from England early in the rehearsal process, and then usually comes back to see some of the performances, as I would do if I could, if someone's doing my songs in England or whatever. So at those times I've met him, and he's a very nice guy and super, super fun to work with. And the plays are very interesting. So it's been a really challenging fun, but fun, like music is, to do the music for those shows. So while he was in New York, I think he was doing Agamemnon Home, which is his version of the Agamemnon play. And I had a few songs in that, because Greek plays also often, they have a chorus, and sometimes you get to set those to music, which is great. So he was in town and he did a reading for NYU. I think he might have done some guest seminars or something for them. But anyway, at a little place that NYU had. And I was like, oh, I'll go to his reading, of course. So I went to the reading, and the first thing that he read was Come My Way, Go Yours. And I heard maybe 5 lines of it before he was even done. I was like, this would make a great song. It's just so sexy and so hot, and so it has such a feel to it. So I asked him right afterward, can I set this to music? He said, oh, sure, of course. So that's how that came about. I'm so glad I went to that reading, because that poem was not in any of his published books yet. Now it is. I forget which book, but at the time, he just had, typewritten paper. So I got it early.
And this is set in like a really like bluesy style. Is this, I imagine you've composed in like jazz styles, but I've also heard some of your art song that is very like new classical, and like you're pulling from a lot of different styles. Do you have a favorite that you always like, you're like, I love this, or do you let the text sort of inform what you choose?
I try to let the text tell me what to do. And because that's the prime mover is the text. The text is there. And what I want to bring out, what I feel is coming from the text. And sometimes, like this one just felt so jazzy to me. And so it just was like, it's got to be kind of like that, it just felt like that to me. But one of the songs from the Agamemnon, which is a Cassandra song, and she's the mysterious, she sees the future and the past. Nobody believes what she's saying. She becomes a prisoner a slave to Agamemnon. Very, an amazing big character. And he had a lyric for her. It starts with, what came to you will come to you. And it's all, you'll know it, you won't know it, you see it, you don't see it. Very mysterious. And then he has some words that he kind of made up that he thought would exemplify the language of Troy, Trojan language, whatever that was. And he did some research. I don't check up on his research, but he did something, and it felt like that might be what it is. And the style of that is very, very different. It's very spare, and it just kind of leaves the voice up there. I would love you to sing it. That way you'll know what it's like. Yeah. But it's completely, completely different, because it felt like it should be different. And you get, as we were saying, you get a feeling from the text, and I try to make that feeling into music, express that in music.
Yeah, I was looking through your website, and singers out there, check out Ellen's website. There's so much great music on there. I was like trying to pick a song, and I was like, I think I sent you like 4 different pieces. I was like, I don't know, maybe one of these.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, anything you want.
Because I was like, these are all so good. There was one piece, I think it was called Gray Room.
Oh, Gray Room, yeah.
And it was so gorgeous, and with like those floating lines that go up, I'm like, oh my gosh.
That's an amazing poem. Talk about a held back poem. And that poem, I was lucky. I have been invited numerous times to create songs to poems that were being poems by poets who were being celebrated at a cabaret. So, and they would, I could do whatever I wanted. They would, you know, any style. It didn't have to be cabaret style. It didn't have to be classical, whatever I felt. And so they did a Wallace Stevens evening, and I had not really read Wallace Stevens, and I was reading through the poems. And this poem, this Gray Room, I had done music for the play The Heiress, which is adapted from a story by Henry James called Washington Square. And it's a terrible, it's a wonderful story, but it's really, really horrible about this young woman whose father is a doctor, and his wife, her mother, died giving birth to her. And so he's always, you know, she's always been trying to get his approval, and he never really gives his approval. And it's just torture to read, but very, very good. I mean, it's so vivid. And finally, she runs away with basically a young wastrel. He seduces her because he wants the father's money. And then she wants to run away with him. He leaves her, and then she finds out that he's been flirting with other people, and that he really only wants her for her money. So at the end of the story, he comes back to her finally. First, he stands her up. She's all ready to elope with him, and he doesn't come. And now he comes back, and he knocks on the door, and she doesn't let him in. She just ignores it. She draws all the curtains, and she sits down to her, she's doing embroidery, this very solitary, prim kind of activity. And the James story ends with, she sat down to her embroidery for life, as it were, like a living debt of repression. And I feel like that poem, The Gray Room, is so like a portrait of her at the end, you know, she just touches her dress and she moves something ever so slightly because she's so holding it all in, but inside she's going absolutely nuts. So it's a great poem. My hair is a little standing on end when I talk about it because it's so visceral in a way, you know, the contrast between the repression and the wall. And then inside, you know, I know how passionately, or is it passionately? I know how passionately, I guess, what's really happening.
Yeah. That's, oh, you froze for a minute here. Oh, there you go. All right. Sorry, you froze for a second. That actually reminds me a little bit of Gretchen am Spinnrade, that like, that you feel the madness like bubbling underneath, but there's this like, calm spinning, like yeah, that underlying yeah, that it just brought that to my mind. This you've composed for a lot of, you've had music performed in a lot of different festivals, the Tribeca New Music Festival, Serena Poetry Festival, In Series, Florio Street Concerts, sort of all over, even in Scotland, England, Germany. How did you get involved with that? Do you arrange for tours? Do you apply to be part of these festivals?
I've been, all the festivals that I've had my music in, and I've basically performed with a singer, so it's been tremendous fun. They've all been facilitated by someone who knew about the festival or who was involved with the festival. You know, the magic of networking, the magic of people you know who know other people who have been to some event somewhere. So the In Series, which was in Washington, a woman, a friend of my in-laws, I think, a very, very nice woman who loved music. She had arranged a concert at, she was at a Unitarian church. She belonged to a Unitarian church. And Cummings' father was a big Unitarian minister in the Boston area. So somehow, with her being in this congregation and saying something about Cummings, and I guess they had cultural events, she arranged a concert at that church. And then also the same weekend, a concert at this In Series, which she had just been, you know, going to. so you know, just so wonderful. I owe her such a debt of gratitude for doing all that kind of work that it's very hard to do for yourself, to say, please put me in your festival. You know, if somebody else says, here's this great person or whatever she said, put her in your festival, you know, it's much easier. I just said, yes, happy. And the same thing with Cyrena, that was at a college where I had done music for plays for their theatrical department. So somehow through that, I was introduced by the professor who I had done music for to the people who were running that festival. That was super fun because poets came from all over the world and read and shared their poems. And a few of them did translations. I did a concert of Cummings poems there. And one of the sessions was that inviting these poets from different areas, but who spoke English, to translate some of the poems that I had set to music into their language. And that was fascinating because some of them were quite literal. The ones, I mean, I could only understand a little of the French, Italian, and German. Those are the only languages I know. But some were quite close to the text, and others were really took off and just kind of went on the flow of what they felt the emotions were. Very, very interesting, but super, super fun. So it's great. It's great when your music, well, just like with you, when your music spreads out, it's so wonderful. You don't know where it might go, you know.
It is a very small world. And I've realized, especially since putting together this series, just how small it is.
Like it is. People know each other.
Absolutely. I didn't know you, and we met on a singers forum briefly a few months ago. And then when I posted on Monday that we were doing this series, a friend of mine actually commented, and she's like, I just bought one of her pieces and I'm going to sing it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I know. I was like, oh, yep, like very small world. Everyone knows everyone. I have friends like commenting on the other posts like, oh, I met this person in Austria. And
it's so amazing when they're really from different realms. A woman who sang some of my music in a festival in Kansas, then I went to a performance here of a small opera company, a wonderful company called Del Arte Opera Ensemble. They produce full-size operas, about an orchestra of about 14 pieces, with young singing artists. So one of the singing artists was from Hawaii, and this woman who sang in Kansas had been from Hawaii. And I said, oh, you're from Hawaii. Do you know, think of her name, Amy Alyssa Johnson. Oh my God, we're close friends. You know, here we are in New York. She sang in Kansas and he's from Hawaii. And now the three of us are connected. Crazy. It's great though. I love that. I love that connection.
I do too. It's nice. And I think that was a big reason for doing this as well, is I miss that collaboration, that community.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so I'm loving this, and I love that you and Wendy. If you guys don't know Wendy Prober Cohen, you should check her out. She's incredible, and we had all sort of touched base together about this piece. So I was so glad you guys had a chance to chat too.
Oh yes. I mean, I love to be in touch with people. I always, if people want my scores, I always say, let me know if you have any questions, and because people could have it could be any kind of question, and I'm happy to. I mean, what is more fun than talking about our work, except doing it, which is the most fun.
Yes, 100%. I do want to make sure you have some really cool upcoming projects, and I do want to make sure we mention them so everyone can be on the lookout. And be sure and send me links when they're coming out, and I'll add them to the comments, guys, so you can keep in touch and keep checking those things out. You have a radio series coming up in November?
Yes, this is so exciting. It's actually based in LA, right near you. But of course, it's online, so it's everywhere. It could be any place. And it's a company called the Antaeus Theater Company, and I've done I think I've done music for 5 plays for them. I've never been there. They're a small company, a low budget, but the sound, here's another networking thing. The fellow who's the sound designer there, or one of their sound designers, is a friend of mine from ages ago when I was doing improv comedy. I saw something about her doing a concert on Facebook. Thank you, Facebook. Facebook can be very wonderful, even though it can be horrible, but it can be really great. I saw that she was doing a concert, and I hadn't realized she was, you know, an active singer. So I got in touch with her and I said, oh, you're doing a concert and I'm writing this, and I've been doing a lot of music for theater, you know, in the many years in between. And she said, oh, you have to meet, let me introduce you to this fellow. His name is Jeff Gardner. Very nice. We have worked together, I think, on 5 shows, and he's the sound designer for this radio series. It's Radio Zip Code or something like that. It's based on plays that they've invited people to write, short plays set in the various various zip codes of LA. And so he got in touch with me to do the, you know, I'm providing a kind of a theme music for the whole series, which is thrilling to me. I've always wanted to do theme music for some kind of you know, an airing, a television or a radio series, because some of the theme music on shows is so fabulous, you know. So I'm providing them with some theme music, and then they have these different plays, and I'll put in, you know, where necessary, a little incidental music that will, you know, that will be helpful. It's going to be, it's very exciting to me to do that, and of course all remotely. And this fellow and I have worked together on multiple productions, and we've basically communicated only through email and MP3s. And we hear things the same way. So we hear mood, we hear tempo, we hear shades of instrumentation, just amazingly. So we've had, I think, 2 phone conversations and done 5 shows together. It's so great. It's just, you know, we just amazing how you can communicate. Thank you to the World Wide Web, you know.
Yeah. I will say there are a few positives that came out of this whole experience. And I think it's that we've realized collaboration, like, will find a way, and it's so possible with all the technology available to us.
Yes. And that's going to be on the air, I think, in November. They're aiming for November. Nice. So I will definitely send you the links once there are links.
That's awesome. Please do, and I'll include it. I love that it's in LA. I'm like, it's in my backyard. And then you also have another project, the Edward Hopper Project, and this is a song cycle. Correct?
This is what's really been keeping me sane in this COVID time. My friend Daniel Neer, who's a wonderful singer, he's a terrific high baritone, and also a great writer. And he's written libretti, and he's written, you know, all different kinds of stuff and poems. And he had the idea a few years ago of doing a cycle of haiku about living in New York. And he invited me to set those to music, and we made a 12-song cycle. It's about 13 minutes of his haiku. So we got together about a year ago, I think, maybe a little more. And we were like, you know what would be great would be to do a bunch of haiku on Edward Hopper paintings that the 2 of us love and many people love. And he would write the haiku, and then I would set those to music, setting the haiku together, but also the mood of the paintings. So we've been working on that. I got a little bit of a start in the fall, and then I was busy with other projects, actually another theater project in LA and some travel. And then really right when this COVID shut everything down, I lost several theater productions that I was going to be doing in New York. I lost performances that I was going to be doing, you know, all of that stopped. I was like, I have time to work on this now. This is great. This is my time. So I've composed 9 songs to these haiku, and I look at the paintings and I read the haiku, and I try to feel what the mood is and what the drama is. And it's just and then in terms of collaborating and you're not there, Daniel used to live in New York, but now he lives in Washington. But he comes up here, he teaches, I think, at Manus. So in the normal times in the fall, when I had written my first couple, we got together. I went over to Manus and we, as you love to do, I sat down at the piano and he started reading and we went through and we had whatever we thought. And that's how we've always worked together. But this year, it's different. So I write the music and then I play the piano accompaniment. I make an accompaniment to it. And I send him the score and the accompaniment. And then he plays out the accompaniment and records his voice on top and sends it back to me. And then I can hear what we've really, what's really there. And then we have a FaceTime, another fabulous web thing. We could do Zoom, but we've been doing FaceTime. And I put my phone up on the piano because then it feels like he's really right there. I just like that. And we talk about it. And sometimes the songs are just, we're just happy with it and it's great. But many times I'll be like, oh, well, no, but I was listening to it. I felt this was too rushed, or I wish there was more of that, So then I come back and I, make a note of what we discussed and I do revising and send it back, make another accompaniment, send it back, send him the score. So, and it's been wonderful and just wonderful. And the paintings are so evocative of this time because many of them are people either alone or kind of isolated from other people. There's a very powerful feeling of this moment and nothing else in a way, that it's two people, and there's one that's New York Apartment, I think it's called. It's two people, and the woman has her hands on a piano, just one finger. It looks like she's just playing, just bored, just playing one note. And the man, there's a man, so she's got kind of her back to him, and he's over there looking at a newspaper, maybe like looking at the want ads or something, just they're together, but they're completely isolated from each other. And those feelings of strangeness but intensity are so like today, so we didn't start it thinking, well, in March, everything's going to shut down. But it seems to strike a chord, I just finished, he wrote a terrific poem for the painting Nighthawks, which is that one where the three people are in a diner and the waiter, it's nighttime, and the diner is lit up and the city is dark and they're just kind of sitting there. And there've been quite a few, well, I can think of two versions of that painting where people have said, Nighthawks for today, they take all the people out of the cafe. One of them, they took the people out, and one of them, they put the tables outside. I was like, it's so amazing, It's really great. It's a really fun project. And that's another one that leads to all different kinds of music, depending on the mood of the painting and the mood of Daniel's haiku. So.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that you're not worried about mixing styles within a cycle. I think it's a nice release, it really encapsulates the piece that you're seeing at the time. You could see that evolution. I love that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's hard when people say, well, what style of music do you write? It's whatever seems right at the moment. I mean, because music is so great. I mean, there's no stopping music. There's every kind of music is so great. And if it feels right, that's the one,
And it seems like more composers are embracing that freedom now.
Yeah.
Last week I was speaking with Felix Gerard.
Oh, I know that name. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So we did an excerpt from his opera Tabula Rasa, and it's like classical mixed with jazz, and we were talking about that too. And he's like, I'll put some pop into a piece. I'll mix whatever genre I feel is right for it. And I love that. You know, there's not this stigma around we have to be like classical composers. We can pull from all these incredible genres that are out there.
Yeah. Well, everybody always has.
Yeah.
So not to the it's kind of stifling to feel that you can only, you know, you can only do very abstract music. I have a friend who's really that a pianist, a wonderful, wonderful pianist, and she tends to play only that kind of music, mostly very percussive. It's kind of all in the rhythms. It's there's very little harmonic interest. It's kind of it's a little like Philip Glass, but more dynamic rhythmically,
Mhm.
but similarly static in basically there's no melody. I happen to like melody, and especially if you're writing for singers, I'm like, you know, I want singers for you. I want you to enjoy singing the music. I want it to feel singable and actually like you want to sing those notes, you know, that they will draw themselves out of you because they feel like the music that you want, you know.
Yeah.
So that, and I'm happy to transpose. I sort of, unless it's way far and it kind of completely changes everything.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not really stuck on C minor or D minor or B flat minor. Sometimes a transposition, depending what's in the music, you look at it and you're like, oh God, no pianist is going to want to play this because it's all now double sharps or double flats or, you know, and I just say like, you know, let's just move it a half step to where it looks like I can stand myself, you know. Mostly somebody just wanted a score and I was like, well, he wants it in C sharp minor. I thought, what's that going to look like? It looked fine. It was like, no, you know, no problem. So good. But some of those keys, and especially like Gray Room, is very ambiguous in its tonality. And so if in certain transpositions, you sort of, you look at it and you're like, I already don't really know what the harmony is in some of it. It's already just kind of out there floating over notes, you know. But no, you can't have double flats and double sharps at the same time or something. You gotta, sometimes you can clean it up and make it okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I definitely loved singing "Come My Way, Go Yours."
Yay.
I'm excited to share it tomorrow.
Please.
Make sure you guys check it out. It's great. I'll send you a link to it, but I'll also tag you in it tomorrow. And I could talk to you all day.
Me
I
too.
think I could. I totally could. But I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Likewise.
Just
Oh, so I'm not gonna hear it right now.
I know.
Oh, ah,
Tomorrow at 10:30. I will send it. Okay. I'll send it to you before that. I'll email it to you before then. You can see. But
I'm so glad to meet you. And this is just super fun. And I really look forward to hearing it. I know it will just sound wonderful. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for your interest in my music. I mean, this is wonderful for me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and chatting with me today. And I'm excited to share the piece.